So good evening. We're recording this in two parts. The first part I'll be recording now as it wasn't recorded when we did the class yesterday. And the second part was recorded during the class. So you should have it in two parts, but we'll do the first part is now a little bit quicker, going through the first section. Really, there's two sections to the class. First section of the class will focus on the value. What is the value, the Jewish Torah value that we'll be discussing this evening? And the second part of the class will be how that value translates into practical Jewish civil law and how we find comparisons with those laws and different values and how they feature in other law systems in the United States and elsewhere. It's a fascinating class and I'm looking forward. So first of all, I'd like to share a video about a fellow Jonad Zegedi. Zegedi is a pretty infamous character who's looked to make a turnaround in his life. And you'll see that it's not as easy as he may have wanted it to be. And that's the value of discussion tonight, is the value of teshuvah, of repentance, of appreciating the responsibility that we have to make it as smooth and as available as possible for somebody to really turn a new leaf and do better, even though they've made some terrible decisions in their past. So here we are. I'll share the screen. Just hold on a minute. We have sorry about this. Okay, optimize for share screen.
Mr. Segedi was the poster boy in Central Europe of anti-Semitism. He was vice president of the European Nazi Party, and during that time, he never missed an opportunity to express his anti-Semitism.
We Jews believe in teshuvah. We have to give every person a chance of repenting.
He created an atmosphere, an anti-Semite atmosphere in the city. That when you say you dirty Jew, it's just like saying hello.
My part of the story is that I decided, give him a chance. That's what Judaism teaches us. Love every Jew, give him a chance. I really believe I will never become an anti-Semite.
It's really hard for me to see him here right in the middle of us, see him standing and talking to us and telling us, I'm a Jew, I'm a real Jew, believe me, I'm proud to be Jewish. I really don't believe him.
Hogy én nem akarok zsidó lenni. Kibe csak egy csepp zsidó vér csörgedezik. Ugyanis az antiszemita gondolkozás az olyan, én ismerem, hogyha van egy hordó vized, belecsöppentesz egy tintát, egy csepp tintát, akkor az meg fogja fogni az egész hordónyi vizet.
Sie heute auch ihre rhetorischen und charismatischen Fähigkeiten ein, um genau diesen Schaden wieder
sagen kann, dass er heute oder jemals jeglichen Funken irgendwie ersprengen kann und ein vollkommener Jude in Anführungszeichen sein.
Hallo Herr Segedi, ich bin nämlich selber auch Ungarin. Einer der Gründe, warum ich in Deutschland bin, ist Menschen wie Sie, Herr Segedi. Für mich, in meinen Augen, ist es ein Riesen-Fake. Es ist ein Riesentheater, was Sie uns vorspielen und was auch im Video gesehen wurde.
Tapssal, és nem éjjenzéssel van kikövezve. Abszolút megértem, ha valaki így gondolkozik. Nem esik jól, rosszul esik, persze, hogy rosszul esik. Persze, hogy ezeknek a kétkedő embereknek nem bízom, hogy egy idő után majd eloszlanak a kételjei. Nem tudok más tenni.
Okay, so there you have it. This Jana Jagedi, who became a fellow seated in the EU, who had a representation at the head of the Jobbik party, which was a radical nationalist party. They had hate crimes of, and including murder of people that they did not like, people that they were against. They began a militia that they set up, a civilian militia which marched through the streets of Hungary dressed in black. They just taunted and hated all of the minorities, especially the Jewish people. So this is a fellow who was at the helm of this nationalist party until he found out that he was a Jew. And then the heads of the party with him threw him out. They blamed it on some sort of financial issues. But he really believes that it was because of his Jewishness. And this led him on a path of rediscovering the facts about the Jewish people. And he chose to go and speak out against hatred. And in a case, like you'll see the beginning of your lesson 2, at the beginning of your book, page 38, an anti-Semite discovers that he is Jewish. You could read through it, where he was actually scheduled to speak in Chabad of Westmount in Montreal, in Canada, and the Canadian authorities turned him around at the airport and sent him back home because of his history. He was not able to speak in person. He had to send a video message. And at that occasion, people were standing and screaming and shouting because they felt, how could this person now, so to speak, claim love for the Jewish people if he was so full of hate? So the question for you is, as he states it in his words, the end of page 39, take a look. In the last few lines, he says to the people, I have to tell the Canadian Jewish community that I am exactly such a Jew as they are. I cannot help it as you cannot help it. So if you had a choice and a decision to make about such an individual, page 40, exercise 2.1, would you ever be open to accepting this Jagedi as a member of the Jewish community in good standing? Like somebody pointed out last night, we all know there are good Jews, there are bad Jews, so to speak. There are Jews that are doing good things, there are Jews that are not doing such good things. In this case, we're asking, would you accept him as a member in good standing? That is to say, would you accept that he has completely turned around? Would you consider him sincere? Yes or no? And if the answer is no, or if the answer is yes, what steps would he have to take, or would he have taken to become a member in good standing? What are the 5 important steps that one must take after doing bad, evil, just not good things to make what they've done wrong right and to turn a new leaf? What are the critical steps? Take a moment to think about what those steps might be and write them down. in your booklets on page 41 through 5. Now it's interesting. So, we all have the joke goes, what's the difference between a Jew and an anti-Semite? An anti-Semite hates the Jewish people. Jewish people hate them. But Yankel's a good friend of mine. He's a gem of a guy. I'd go to him any day for anything I need. And how does a Jew think? A Jew says, I love the Jewish people. But Yankel's a swindler. He's a ganef. He deserves to rot in, So that's the difference between a Jew and an anti-Semite. An anti-Semite would say, there is always an exception. There is also a good Jew. But some of us might, though we love the Jewish people, might just say, not so sure about some individuals in the Jewish people. I'm not so sure how far I'm willing to go to accept them. And so this is essentially the question of tonight. What is the Jewish value of teshuvah, of repentance? What are the steps towards that? And how far do we have to go to help somebody who's done wrong correct their wrongdoing and really believe in their goodness and in their ability to rehabilitate themselves? And where do we draw the line? Is there anybody that's out that can never truly right their wrong? Is there anyone who's just too far gone? So we're looking at Maimonides to answer that question from the Torah view. Page 41, text number 2. Hatshuva mechaperes al kol ha'averos. Teshuvah for all. Says Maimonides, teshuvah atones for all sins. Even if one was wicked their entire life and did teshuvah at the last moment. Even if one was wicked their entire life and did teshuvah at the last moment, you have it. Here you could zoom in on your screen. Excuse me. Their wickedness is no longer held against them. This is the meaning of the verse. A wicked person will not stumble due to their wickedness on the day they do teshuvah for it. So teshuvah atones for all sins, for all people, even if one was wicked their entire life, and at any moment, even the last moment. So teshuvah is an opportunity for all. There is nobody that teshuvah is not available for them. That's a huge deal. That means that people that we've really crossed out on our list have today or any single day have the opportunity to do a full teshuvah. Now, the scale of the teshuvah and the steps will be discussed in just a moment. So take a look at your 5 steps of teshuvah, page 42. 5 steps of teshuvah in Jewish law, not just a moral suggestion, but this is Jewish law. What are the 5 steps of teshuvah? A, starting from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Resolution not to reoffend. That's the first step. You cannot move forward on the path of teshuvah if you've not yet let go of the idea of continuing the bad behavior or the negative actions. You have to let go and say, I'm committing not to reoffend. 2, remorse for the offense. Not just an acceptance that what you've done is wrong, but a true remorse where you feel badly. You, so to speak, cut out all that enjoyment that you got from the bad thing that you've done because you're now feeling so bad about it. 3, restitution for financial damages in behavior between man and man, between people. if one damaged another or stole from another or embarrassed another in any way that it affected them financially, restitution for financial damages. 4, appeasement of the victim. You have to ask for forgiveness. You have to ask for it meaningfully and sincerely, not once, not twice, up to 3 times to request sincere forgiveness. And if they don't forgive you at that point, you've done your thing, but you have to do your best to reach out to the victim. And 5, and this is big because this is where the mitzvah is found, the action item, especially in teshuvah between man and God, between a wrongdoing that a man acted wrongly, not to his fellow, but to something that God instructed him. In Jewish law, one has to verbalize the confession of what they did wrong in a statement of remorse and resolution for the future. It's not that you're confessing to another human being, you're confessing to God, and we actually have that in our prayer. We have it in our prayer in the everyday Amidah, and obviously on the Yom Kippur, the Vidui. That is the term, Vidui is confession, and that's what we speak out throughout the prayers in Yom Kippur, where we're in the process of teshuvah. So these are the 5 steps. Resolution not to reoffend, that's pretty straightforward. Remorse is also pretty straightforward. Restitution for financial damages, what does that entail? What do you have to pay back? Exactly what you damaged, exactly what you stole. We're going to discuss that in just a moment. Appeasement of the victim and verbal confession. Okay, so what's special about the value of teshuvah here is not just that teshuvah is for people like we'll think that are criminals and that have done terribly egregious things. Teshuvah is really for everyone. Not only that, teshuvah is explained as the purpose for which God sends us and our souls down to this earth. Now think about it. God takes, every one of us have a soul, a unique soul that's gifted to us, our life, our personality, our mission, our soul. God takes this pristine soul that's hanging out in the spiritual realms, just close and connected, experiencing the closeness to God. God takes this soul and schleps it down into a lowly material world, into a material body, a physical body. Half the day, third of the day you spend sleeping, the other third of the day you're eating, you're going to the bathroom, you're taking care of very menial things. Very small portion of your day are you dedicating to your mission in life. What's your goal here on earth? And so God's taking this soul and sticking it into such a world, such a crazy world that we live in. What do you think God hopes for? You think God hopes that the soul will go through its entire life with perfection without ever making a mistake? You think that this person is expected never to make a mistake? That's not true. God totally expects that a person will come and live a life and he's going to make mistakes. Some purposefully, some by mistake. He'll do some things that are, not ideal and make some bad choices. So why does God send a soul onto the earth if he knows we're going to mess up? It says that even a tzaddik, a righteous individual, ein tzaddik ba'aretz, there is no tzaddik on earth, asher ya'aseh tov, which does good, this righteous individual who does good, but will not be lacking in some way. Everyone is lacking in some way. None of us are perfect. Nobody is perfect. So what is God hoping for? And so there are many sources that point to this. that God actually sends us down looking forward to the mistakes that we make and the eventual teshuvah, the eventual return and recommitment that we make after falling. It's not about that we've fallen down. It's about the fact that we're given the opportunity to always get up. And when we get up, we actually stand in a taller place. We actually stand stronger than we stood before we fell. I gave the example last night of a rope that you cut. And a rope has a certain tension that it could handle, a weight that it could handle. But if you cut a rope and then you tie the two ends together within a very strong knot, that rope can now handle much more tension, because that point, that knot that you've tied is extremely strong and could handle a lot of tension. Which means to say, once a person has cut the rope, has failed, has unfortunately been disconnected in some way, and then reconnects themselves, that connection is so much stronger. Because the person appreciates everything in a deeper way when they've experienced the lack of it. The person is much more committed and passionate when they chose this path from a place where they were in a difficult zone. And a person is in general able to see the value of life far beyond what it is in the ideal perfect world and what it is in the realistic world that God expects of us to do our best. So tshuva is not just for the criminal that we're thinking about here, or such a person like Jegedi who really chose some terrible path in his earlier life. Tshuva is for us all. We all make mistakes, and we all have the real opportunity of turning those things around. But in today's culture, you might be familiar with what's considered the cancel culture. Today's culture, it kind of is the opposite of this value of teshuvah. Today's culture loves to build people up. The media will take somebody who they think is an exciting prospect. They love to build them up and they'll monitor them, and they'll see everything that they do, and they'll try to make a big deal and a big star out of them. And then comes the day when this person either does something not so correct, or something is discovered about what the person did at any point in time, even when they were a child or when they were a teenager, whatever it is. The media loves to build people up, and then they release something about the person that was not good, and boom, cancel. We cancel and schlep down the person to the ground. That's it. No more position, no more chances. How could you have such an upstanding position? How could you have done such a thing? The media and in general, that's the culture nowadays. People love canceling. And so this value of teshuvah is very important because it flies in the face of that. How does teshuvah relate to our legal system? Okay, so let's pause for a moment and take a look at, so some of the other texts here are relating to teshuvah. And here we have on page 46, I'd just like you to think for a moment. Emulating God, Jewish law introduces leniencies to encourage thieves to do teshuvah. Exercise 2.2, what can the legal system do to encourage and assist offenders to rehabilitate themselves? I'd like you to take a moment to just think about that question. If you have experienced a recent crime against you, then it might be a good idea to consider that scenario and think about the person that did the crime and how you felt about that person. Obviously, the feelings are strong. And then consider what might be a way of of having them rehabilitated. Instead of the kind of initial gut reaction, get this guy out of here, they get him into prison, I don't want to see him, I don't want him on my streets. Think deeper into what sort of process would be appropriate into trying to get this person to a better place. They're obviously not in a good place. So how could we bring them to a better place? And as you're thinking about that, 1, 2, and 3, maybe 3 points, if you can think about that, I'll just mention what we had mentioned in the class yesterday by Alan, that he was saying, you know, somebody litters coming from California, so this is big deal in California, I guess, but a big deal everywhere, really. Somebody litters, you could have up to $1,000 fine. But what gain really is there from the person paying $1,000 fine? He suggested, instead of paying $1,000 fine, if you catch a guy who's littered, bring him to the place where he's littered and have him do a community service there to pick up the litter. So let's say the scenario of an individual driving from New York to Montreal. You know, he's driving a long drive, and on the way, he's constantly littering, and he gets caught. This fellow has never even considered the people that live in the towns on the way from New York to Montreal. He's got one destination in his mind. He's a New Yorker. He's ready to get to Montreal to meet somebody there. He doesn't care about the people that live on the way. If you got him out of his vehicle, brought him back to the place where he littered, and have him meet the people that live there, what kind of a life they live, how they appreciate the scenery and the beauty of the landscape and being out of the city and where things are clean and fresh and the values that they live with, have him meet up with them, talk to them, appreciate why they live that way, and actually clean up his mess. How much better off would he be and would everyone be? But especially for him himself, how much more quality could you bring to his life with that sort of punishment rather than just throwing $1,000 fine at him? So hold that idea. And think about the fact that so many of the systems in US law and many systems around the world are just reactive to trying to do the best we can to manage the situation. So it's difficult to get somebody to bring him back to where he littered and have him talk to the people. And that's a difficult process. It's easier to throw $1,000 fine on him. And if he doesn't pay the fine, throw him in jail. And then at some point you want to get him out of jail because it's costing you money to keep him in jail. So give him an incentive to get him out of jail. So if he behaves, he could have early release. But all of these pieces are just reacting to the situation. He did something wrong, we have to deal with it. It's too difficult to get down to the bottom of it, so let's just chuck him into jail, into prison. And then we don't want to keep him there, so let's try to bring him out as soon as we can. But let's give him the tools because he's getting stuck in the bad crowd in prison. Let's try to bring him into a better space. All of these are not necessarily the right process forward. Jewish law takes a really cool, proactive approach to help people rehabilitate themselves. How so? And here we have the second part of the lesson, which will be in another recording. So thank you for listening. Please see step 2, recording number 2.